what's up? Hello, I hope you all are doing well. Today's review is about a book that I read a number of months ago, but really had some feelings about, so we're circling back to it today, and that is Circe by Madeline Miller. I'm gonna do that thing where I don't hold this book up the entire time because it's quite large, so why would I do that? But let's get started. I set out to read Circe by Madeline Miller for the Femme Fatale readathon that was in March of this year. And this is actually the only book that I began during that readathon because March of this year looked wildly different than March of every other year of my life. So I began it and didn't finish it until quite a while later. But I had a lot of people who in my TBR video when I announced that I was going to read this book said, be careful, this book is depressing or this book is pretty sad, just go into it knowing that. So that set the tone for me, and boy, that was not wrong advice. This book is not super happy. The tone of it is following along with how you might expect someone who's been exiled from her entire family because they disagree with something kind that she did, because most of them are pretty self-centered and godlike and oppressive, might feel. As I've said rather a lot on this channel, my background in Greek mythology, my understanding of Greek mythology is a huge literary blind spot for me. It was not something that I learned about in school, surprisingly. We did a small unit about Odysseus where I think we read sections of the Odyssey at one point when I was in the 7th or 8th grade, so I would have been 12 or 13 at the time, and then I was made to read the Iliad in college for a literature course. But other than that, the best of my Greek mythology knowledge comes from the Disney movie Hercules and having read the Percy Jackson series. But still in the back of my mind, like many people, I know about Circe. I know that she is exiled and that she is different from the rest of her family, and so anyone who is exiled for reasons that they disagree with, or probably exiled in general, is likely not to be the happiest individual out there. And so this sort of follows her as she grows up, which takes a while because it seems like she never dies. Circe's born into a family of Titans, and she does not exhibit all of the same type of powers that these other folks have, and she is very different, and she does something that they consider unforgivable and they send her away. And so this is the story of her growing up on her own little island where they put her away from everybody else, and sort of learning to live and discover herself and live with herself and live with the people and the monsters and creatures that come along and she meets or creates while she's there. I would say that overall this book is about self-discovery and want. It is a retelling of how those two ideals and opportunities were sort of thrust upon her, but also taken from her in some regard. She spends all of this time alone trying to determine who she is, and then also trying to determine what she wants. She discovers who she is, and with that, what does she want to do with that information, with that power, with that opportunity. And she's besieged by all of these other folks who come to her island without her permission, and they just show up and they interact with her in various ways. If you know a lot about Greek mythology, you probably know some of the things that happen to her. You probably know of some of the people who she encounters and who come to stay with her. I, for one, not having a really solid background in Greek mythology, was interested in trying to sort of pick out before names came up, like, oh, I know who that is. Wait, I know who that is too. I think that this is this person. So that was a fun little game for me as we went along. But overall, her tone doesn't really change. She has like these moments of really bright elation, and then the rest of it is sort of like a low-key sadness the whole time. This book is beautiful. I feel like it's written quite beautifully. The style of it is fascinating because you have her perspective and she narrates all of her own actions. It's her retelling her story, so she tells you what she's about to do or alludes to what she's about to do from a point in the future, and then you sort of hurry and catch up with the present. But she's always quite somber in tone as she's retelling this. And while the story is not constantly happy and not constantly exciting, I think it's interesting to point out that what Madeline Miller does really well is she allows the whole book to carry on with this feeling. I think often in literature, even when the main character is female, authors try and give them like a redeeming moment or something that is going to redeem their sadness if they've been feeling sad. Like they give them something to look forward to, or a moment to be happy, or something that will make up or balance out the rest of these less than happy and less than positive feelings that they've been purveying and effusing and experiencing the entire book. And Madeline Miller doesn't do that, because that's not really, as the myth has it, Circe's life. She exists on this place and amongst these people occasionally and has these experiences and meets these folks, and none of it is ever really like blissfully wonderful to a point where it either changes the tone or massively shifts or balances out her feelings from the rest of the novel, which I think is great. I'm going to anger anybody probably with a literature degree or has really studied literature for a long time, but in my experience, we don't normally see that sort of opportunity afforded to female characters. And perhaps this was done only because she's got such a strong background of mythology to work from. There's a lot that is quote-unquote known about Circe's life and the way that it was lived, and she's personifying that a little bit more to give a perspective that is not often told, and that perspective is not joyful necessarily, but there just does not seem to be a redeeming moment. I don't want to get into too many plot details, even though I know that I'm way behind in having read this, but the holds list for this book at my library was incredibly long, so I'm sure I'm not the only one that is late to the party here. But there isn't really anything in this book that clearly turns the tide, if you will, on why she's feeling the way that she is. And I think that is great. I think it's okay for us to have these sort of somber, like, general unrest and unease and just, comfortable in isolation type of books. If you're looking for something that might mirror how you're feeling, if you've been home alone by yourself for a really long time lately, this could be an interesting book for you. Overall, I enjoyed this book. I enjoyed getting to the end of this book because it was a little bit of a slog. I think if I knew more about Greek mythology or I knew more about Circe, it would have been more fast-paced for me. I could have pushed through it a little bit faster, but I did give this book 4 stars, and I would definitely recommend it. If you've read this book and you feel like it was awful or terrible, I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments, and if you really love it, let me know that there too. As always, thank you so much for watching. We hope you're having lovely weeks and lovely lives, and we will see you very soon.